Hello and welcome back to the Build Your Marketing Muscles podcast. I am your host, Gwen Montoya. I am so thrilled that you're here. Today's episode is a little bit different than what we normally do because I'm going to be talking about my own personal challenge that I gave myself to do 30 videos in 30 days for YouTube. So long form video, not just shorts. I want to talk about what the challenge was, how I did it, the rules that I set for myself, and what the outcome was, because I think it's really interesting and I think it's beneficial, especially from the perspective of challenging ourselves and trying new things. I gave myself a challenge to do 30 YouTube videos in 30 days. I did this specifically because it was something that I was not comfortable with. It was something that I had never done before at that quantity or frequency. It was all new to me, and it was important for me to figure out how to do that. So what I want to talk about is the rules that I set for myself, how I did the challenge, what I learned, and what the results are several months later, because I think it's really interesting. So I want to start with sharing the rules that I gave myself. And again, I did this to myself. Nobody made me do this challenge. This is a challenge I came up with on my own, and probably not something I would ever run as a challenge for like any kind of workshop that I do, just because it was so time intensive, although I learned a lot. These were my rules. I had to do 30 YouTube videos in 30 days. I did not give myself a minimum length of time. I did not say that I had to upload them every single day, although I think in the back of my mind, I thought that's how it was going to work. And in the end, it didn't. I had to follow best practices. So I used a tool called TubeBuddy to help me get the SEO right and the best titles and the best descriptions. I used Canva for my thumbnails. Now, one of the initial snags that I hit while I was doing this was that I wasn't sure what I wanted my Canva thumbnails to be. And I gave myself about 30 minutes to find a template, and then whatever template I picked, I had to go with for the length of the challenge. It was one of the snags for me. It was one of the barriers that had kept me from making videos in the past for YouTube was the thumbnail piece. So by limiting what my options were and the amount of time I was able to spend on it, it helped keep me out of decision paralysis essentially and kept me moving forward. So once I picked my template, I went with it. Now, if you look at my YouTube videos now, my covers, as of right now, I have updated all of them because I ended up by about the middle part of the challenge really hating the covers a lot. But one of my rules was that I couldn't take the time to go back and change them mid-challenge. They were just going to be what I was going to use for the challenge because, again, it would be one of those things that would get me into a cycle, which I will talk about in a minute because I actually did get into a cycle. I just had to go with what I had, and I was just going to keep moving forward, and that's what I did. So those were pretty much my rules. I just had to do the 30 videos in 30 days. I had to follow best practices. I couldn't just throw up something and not put any effort into it. And I had to stick with whatever my thumbnail was after I made it. That was my rule. So why did I do the challenge? I wanted to get better at making YouTube videos for myself. I have worked with clients to improve their YouTube channels, to optimize their YouTube channels, to create content for their YouTube channels. I've done this since about 2015, probably, off and on for clients as I needed it. Like I said, I'm a marketing strategist. I have a really big toolbox. I've done a lot of things over the years, but I have never done consistently my own YouTube videos on purpose. I've used YouTube in the past when I run workshops or I teach trainings or I've done tutorials for specific clients. I've used YouTube with unlisted videos to host them before, but as far as like creating public video, I had never really done that. It was something that I wanted to do, and I gave myself this challenge because I knew that if I had to commit and show up over and over, I would learn it faster, I would learn it better, and I would learn the mistakes that I was going to make, I would get them out of the way faster. That was kind of my thought process as well, is anything that I wanted to learn, I would figure out how to do in the moment, and then I could grow later. But I felt for myself that if I only did one video a month, I wouldn't have the growth that I wanted, and I wouldn't find my own pitfalls and my own shortcomings fast enough. And I really wanted to figure out how that worked. Now, this sounds kind of odd, but I have done these kinds of challenges for myself in the past, and they tend to work really well for my brain. I always feel really happy with them. And in this case, I only got to 15 videos. I did not complete my own challenge because I had a week or so of just the most paralyzing self-doubt and indecision and feeling like I needed to re-record everything because I started to learn. by about video 7, I started to learn all of the mistakes that I had made in the first ones. And I was like, I want to redo those. But that was part of my challenge also, is that I could not stop and go back and re-record. Whatever I did, it just had to go forward so that I could work on the challenge. So I spent about a week really spiraling. And what happened is I got so far behind, because if you miss 7 days of videos, that's a good chunk. And so I got so far behind that I wasn't able to keep up. I had a sort of like a confidence crisis in the middle of it. So I finished at about 15, and I am really proud that I got to 15 instead of 30. I wish that I had got to 30, but what I did learn in the 15 videos was invaluable. So here's what I learned as I did this. When I started this challenge, I thought that fully scripting my videos like a grown-up would be really beneficial for me, because I've done a lot of TikTok videos, I've done a lot of reels, I've done talks, I've, done a lot. Like, I'm not scared of video. I've been teaching people how to do video since, again, like 2015, 2016. So it's not new to me being on video, but sharing my own thoughts this way seems a little bit scary. And I've had a podcast for 5 or 6 years at this point, so I'm used to that process. But having to be aware of the camera as well was new, so that was something that I wanted to learn, and I feel like I've definitely gotten better at that. I figured out my lighting, I figured out my camera, I figured out my microphone. But when it came to the actual content, like I said, I thought I had to write them all out. And so what happened is I wrote the podcast, like full scripted podcast, like the first 7 or so, 7 to 8, I think, were fully scripted podcasts. But what was happening is I was getting frustrated because I was trying to be natural and authentic on video while also reading a script, and it wasn't working for me. And I would start to say the words, and then I would get off track a little bit, or I would mess up a word, and then I would have to start all the way over. And it was really slowing me down and causing such a level of frustration that it would take me way too long to record. And it was just causing such a barrier. So about the middle part, I think probably after my whole crisis of confidence there in the middle, I started to write just notes and highlights of things that I wanted to talk about so that I could reference those and then talk about them. So that was incredibly helpful for me. The other thing that I did is I created an SOP of every single step that I need to take for editing and posting my YouTube videos, because there are more steps. Like, if you make a reel or a TikTok, you kind of just record it and put it up. But for YouTube, there's more moving parts that you have to be aware of in order to create a good video and in order to make it findable through SEO and all of those things. So I wrote basically an instruction manual on how to edit and post my own YouTube videos, so that even if I take a gap, even if there are weeks in between, I will always be able to go back to that list and follow it to make sure that nothing gets missed. Because that was something else that I learned, even using TubeBuddy, there were still things that I needed to figure out how to do it faster and how to do it simpler. I figured that out. I added it to my manual, so I'll always have that going forward. The other benefit of doing a challenge where I had to create content as quickly as I was doing was I got to figure out my own processes and figure out ways that I worked best. It also took a lot of the decision fatigue out of it, because I didn't have as much time to worry about every single choice, because I just needed to get them out. And that helped me. And for some people, that may actually make it worse. But for me, I found it to be very helpful to know that I had a deadline and I wanted to get these out as quickly as possible. So I needed to streamline my own processes. I figured out that my editing was a little bit faster, and creating my templates was a little bit faster, and creating my thumbnails got faster, not just because I understood how to do them, but because I figured out a way to do them quickly for myself. Looking back, my biggest successes were that I stayed consistent where I could. Even when I had my little spiral there in the middle, I came back to it, even though I was really ready to give up. And I did not let myself get bogged down in getting behind. I just kept walking forward as best I could. So even when I got to the 30 days and I hadn't done 30 videos, I still felt really comfortable with what I had accomplished, because I stuck with it even after I had that panic in the middle, and I took a break because I really couldn't record anything, because I was just so full of doubt and lost my confidence and feeling like everything was terrible. And being able to come back to that instead of letting that be the thing that defined the challenge, I consider a success. The other success that I had was figuring out how I wanted to show up, what that was going to look like, and understanding that my videos were going to look like me. My videos were going to look like me and my personality instead of trying to copy somebody else's. And in fact, one of the rules that I gave myself is that I wasn't allowed to do a ton of research in how to do this in the best possible way. I did a little bit, just a little bit so that I wasn't making huge blunders. But for the most part, I needed to figure out how to do this for myself in a way that felt comfortable without, number one, copying somebody else by mistake or getting so lost in the rabbit hole of research that I never actually did anything. Because I've seen so many people do that. They get so stuck in research mode that they forget to implement anything. I needed to know how to do it for myself. And if I failed, then I failed. But I learned so much on this challenge. So it is now several months since the challenge ended. I have continued to put up shorts. I have continued to put up some longer form videos like this one. I did take a little bit of a break right after the challenge just because I obviously hit a little bit of a burnout and needed a break. But what I am seeing for my own account month over month is that my views and my watch time is growing, even if I'm not putting out 15 videos a month, which is great news for everybody. And it's something that a lot of YouTube people say is that you don't have to put out a constant stream of content. It is okay to put out one really good thing. So what I'm focusing on now is creating better videos, creating a better experience, working on my editing and improving that. But I feel like if I had not gone through the process for myself of learning as hard and as fast as I did, it would take me so much longer to get to the point where I felt comfortable focusing on the actual video editing piece. Because I think when it comes to YouTube, there's so many, like I said, there's so many moving parts. It's not just the video, it's not just the audio, it's not just the thumbnail, it's not just the description, it's the editing and the watch time and all of these pieces. For me, really figuring out where I needed to learn first and then focusing on the other pieces later was really helpful for me. One of the things I did was I went back and I changed all of my covers to match because I went through a whole branding change as well. So the thumbnails that you see now are my new branding and not my old branding, which I am much happier with. This challenge was for me more than anything else. It was so that I could learn how to record videos in a way that felt good, so that I could figure out the editing, so I could figure out all of the steps and bits and pieces for myself on my own channel for YouTube. I talked about the challenge on my own communities a little bit, but I didn't make a concentrated effort to push my YouTube channel to my other spaces. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to see what my YouTube channel looked like if it was just left to its own. If it was just me putting out content and people were finding it, what would that look like? Because I'm a nerd, because I'm an analytics nerd, and I wanted to see what it would look like. And so I basically created an experiment for myself where I put out a lot of content. I didn't really talk about it, I didn't really promote it, and then I got to see what happened on its own. And what happened on its own is it was kind of flatline, like I was getting more views month by month. But what I'm noticing is that is where things are actually really starting to pick up. So I am very curious to see what happens in the next 4 months, and I will come back and maybe do an update because I think that's going to be interesting. But I am seeing double and triple views month to month, and I think that's really interesting. And now that I have this baseline, now I will be more proactive about promoting my YouTube channel on other spaces and gaining subscribers that way. It's just been a really interesting experiment. I'm so glad that I did it. I might be the odd one out here that challenges like this really help me grow. But if you're feeling like this might be something beneficial to you, whether it's YouTube or something else, one of the things that I would suggest is if there's something in your business or your marketing that feels a little bit scary, that feels a little bit overwhelming, you're kind of not sure, you can give yourself a challenge. You can just create your own. You can join my membership group and we can do challenges in there too. But there's nothing that stops you from doing a challenge for yourself to see how you can grow. And that's where I love to do them, is to see how I can grow. I just think it's really cool. I think it's really helpful for me, and it helps me do new things in a way that I wouldn't do them otherwise. My goal is to continue to get better at editing, making these a little bit more interesting to watch, seeing how my account grows. It's been an interesting experiment. That's all I have for you. If you have any questions, or if this has spurred any challenges that you might want to take on for yourself, tell me about them. I would love to hear what's going on.